Oh, I played a little bit of guitar today, Dwight. You'll be happy to hear that.
Really?
Yeah, I hadn't played.
Yeah,
I haven't played in quite a while. I played for not too long, maybe 20 minutes I played.
Yeah.
But it felt good.
I just bought some new strings so I could not play on dead strings during quarantine. And it's good, man. I mean, look, I don't know. I've been playing forever, and it's wonderful for me. Even if I'm like listening to something on headphones and watching something like a television program or something like that, like I'll just noodle around in the background, just like trills back and forth, just to like have fun and play with it and keep my calluses up and whatnot. But it's the best, man. What's funny though is for decades I spent time like creating music and writing music, and then nearly as soon as I got on Twitter and as soon as we started doing the show, like I haven't written anything. and I thought for a while that I was actually mad at that, but I'm not, because this is like a creative outlet. A, it's a creative outlet.
Sure.
Straight up. And then B, something that I don't know how, it's just something that feels a little bit more salient. I mean, like I was thinking about this actually a month ago. I was like, there's no protest songs now. You know what I'm saying? Like there was some like cultural relevance with music in like the civil rights movement in the 60s and even like in the labor movement, fucking like Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger, who obviously we're big fans of. And like now, like maybe I'm just ignorant and fucking out of touch and just haven't gotten into the right sectors of TikTok, but like where is the equivalent like musical movement?
Everyone is so cynical nowadays that I feel like if anybody even like did some protest songs, people would be like, pretty cringe, bro.
Yeah.
Like just even the slightest bit of sincerity. Yeah, if anybody made some protest songs, people would think it was cringe, which it's a shame, frankly.
Yeah,
it is a fucking shame.
Yeah, it is a shame that any bit of sincerity in the poison well of cynicism that is online is viewed as weakness or is viewed as cringe.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I think my kind of style is relatively unironic, and
I thought you were gonna say it's relatively cringe.
Oh, definitely. I mean, look, I don't give a shit. I'm on the older side of millennial, and like, I guess for the most part I am. And maybe I'm just too old and not hip and with it. But like, I don't know. I'm pretty unironic. I guess I'm also, I have to admit that I'm like tacitly saying that like, I'm not like, I'm relatively social, and people don't fucking say like, hey, fucking idiot. What are you doing with that cringe, bro? It does occasionally happen.
I mean, vis-a-vis like irony and cynicism and everything, like I think that to a certain extent it can feel good to operate in those modes, and there are times when those kind of dispositions can serve as a way to process things that are truly out of your control.
I'm certainly guilty of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everybody is to a certain extent, but I also think that as like a primary like starting point, like just a psychological place to be in, I feel pretty strongly that it's actually not usually, and I think this plays out historically as well, I don't think that kind of deep sense of cynicism is an attitude that characterizes like, movements that are able to affect change, right? Like usually, cynicism is really like the politics of despair. And in fact, I think that the powers that be at various times in history, and particularly in like really stark authoritarian moments, or a very elite-driven moments, they cultivate cynicism as both as something that they operate in, like cynicism of the elites, but also cynicism then kind of pushed to the below, and that's in part why like so many of the kind of like snarky, quick-witted reaction, angry reaction kind of stuff that came out of like the 90s and 2000s, so many of those cultural figures ended up becoming like right-wing or like, siding with the Trump train and everything, or becoming alt-right because, because there's this weird sense then in that kind of like cynical, affirmation of, nothing fucking matters, right? Like ultimately that just serves the powerful and the existing power relations and social structures that are already pervasive and dominant, right? And so that's why you have like fucking like, on the right-wing side, you have people who, you know, in the alt-right or whatever, white nationalists, that kind of general space, like, who try to position themselves as, like, being subversive, but their subversion is just, like, reaffirming, like, all of the dominant hegemonic shit that already exists, like white supremacy or, you know, patriarchal sexual relations or whatever. And so, you know, and on the left-hand side, you know, sometimes you see similar kinds of things. And it's not to say, again, that all irony or all satire or all cynicism is inherently bad or evil, but as a general thing, I do think it stems more out of despair than hope. And hope is generally tied to sincerity. And so, like you said, Chris, it's a shame that there's, at least in certain spaces, you know, in this online world that we find ourselves in, like, that sincerity is just immediately written off as, like, weakness or something. It's right. A shame.
I think that South Park is a good example of what you were saying about, like...
yeah, of course.
You know, their view was basically that, you know, sort of believing in anything or caring about anything, or, you know, sincerity regarding anything, and like they you know, they took this like bipartisan approach, like, well, we skewer both sides.
Right.
But, you know,
they don't really, though.
Right, yeah. You end up siding with the powerful. Yeah.
Ultimately, they ended up being like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're pretty libertarian, like pretty right-wing dudes.
Yeah,
you know, and I think, you know, certainly for me, certainly for most people of my generation, I mean, I certainly grew up, you know, watching South Park and loving South Park, and that influenced probably a lot of people of our generation, a lot of our, you know, senses of humor and stuff like that. Not that I'm blaming it, but you know.
No, for sure. I mean, I think it's a good example of a number of cultural things that existed during that same time in that same space. I mean, you can think about like a lot of different like stand-up comics who also went down that route, or just in general, you know, like a lot of elements and places of pop culture. You know, a lot of the kind of like hipstery, cool culture of the 2000s or whatever, it was all predicated on like not caring or being aloof, or, you know, being as jaded as fucking possible, you know, which, and again, a lot of that gets accelerated online just because of the fucking swarm of content that you're engaging with, right? So it's very easy to sort of just then tune out and be like, oh, I've seen it all, you know, whatever, who cares? You know, nothing can surprise me at this point. And I don't know, there's some surprises left in store, let me tell you.
Speaking of which, and I will throw some shade someone's way.
Uh-oh.
You know who fucking sucks?
Who? Let's hear it.
Adam Carolla. Fuck me, man.
Oh, of course. I mean, he's a straight up. Yeah, he's a PragerU presenter. I mean, he did that movie that just came out with Dennis Prager. What's it called? Triggered, or No Safe Spaces, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, he's like, he's explicitly like a right wing, like anti, you know, PC campus culture type guy.
But he went. The thing that really fucking pissed me off, and it doesn't even bear. It's not even worth it to talk about. But is he gave like some fucked up interview where he was just like, white privilege doesn't exist. That's it. Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the grip that all of them are on. I mean, this also is like that image that was circulating of, I guess, the new project that like Gavin McInnes and a bunch of these other fucking right-wing idiots are all on, where, you know, it's like censored and he's like really up close in the camera, and you know, he's like has his finger over his mouth, like, oh, the whole irony there is like, I'm being censored for my ability to speak, and that's why I have a whole new platform.
Yeah, and he's a gazillionaire. He's a fucking gazillionaire. It's like not even worth talking about because it's so fucking boring. They have nothing. Yeah. It's fucking built on sand. That is, you know, I don't know. I know we dance the edge between sincerity and irony too, but like that's why like it makes me more confident that ultimately our hope-based and our positive-based change will prevail, is because we're actually built on something, and they is just built on these fucking petty manufactured grievances that are so fucking boring. Yeah. How do they can't possibly, they must wake up every day and be like, fuck, I gotta do this same shtick again. What a fucking joke, man. Yeah. No wonder fucking Gavin McInnes is turning everything he can find into a suppository on camera. Like, because there's nothing else. You hit it's such a shallow fucking well to try to dredge. You hit the bottom so quick.
I was thinking similar to that. Like, you remember the Steven Crowder thing that he did a few months ago, the live stream after the Epstein shit happened?
I watched it. I think we all. His marketing really was successful. He tricked us all into watching it.
The whole idea was like he was gonna try to kill himself on camera,
right?
Vis-a-vis the way that Epstein did, and of course the whole point of it was to do, the like Epstein didn't kill himself thing. But he he wore this like ridiculous helmet. And he tried to like choke himself out or whatever using a towel wrapped around some recreation of the cell. And I remember watching it, and I've even with the deep dive that I've done into like the dark recesses of the right-wing internet, I've barely encountered Crowder just because he's so fucking lame compared to even like within those like some of those communities, like they don't take him seriously at all. And so I was watching him and I was really trying to figure out like who finds this funny, like who finds this interesting, and that I don't really know the rest of his repertoire, but like that particular thing that I watched for about 10 or 15 minutes, it made me think of like Jackass. Like that was the only thing I could kind of think of. Where it's just like it's like I'm gonna do this insane, stupid stunt where I'm gonna like physically harm myself for a bit.
Well, even the helmet and everything, like the whole concept of it was it was like an Evil Knievel parody. He was like
right.
That's why he had the helmet. I think he had a cape on as well. Like he was dressed like Evil Knievel, like he was doing like this stuntman thing,
devoid of originality.
He is a correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that he's just a failed comedian. Like I think that originally he was a there's no politics involved in it at all. I think he was just a stand-up comedian, and he's obviously sucked shit at it, and his career tanked, which I think is why he then pivoted to the right so that he could get like you're wondering who his audience is. It's like it's the bewildered elderly. It's like it's 80-year-old. It's Fox News grandmas and grandpas who like think he's like, oh, he's young and hip and funny, and like, oh, I'm gonna get his new DVD for my grandkids. What else was I gonna say? Oh no, but I really on the topic of sincerity and that type of stuff. I feel like the coronavirus thing like really is this moment where like I'm sort of noticing like everybody is like either going like pivoting towards sincerity or like pivoting towards like full on like black pill nihilism and cynicism. Like I've certainly noticed myself becoming more sincere in my behavior online. Like genuinely posting and asking like, hey, how's everybody doing? Coming from a place of like I give a shit about how people are doing. I'm finding myself becoming behaving sincerely in a way that I just didn't do a year ago. Where I sort of like had this sort of posting from this with a sort of a detached irony, sort of posting almost like as like a character. You know what I'm saying? Or like posting with a voice that wasn't necessarily always my own. Whereas nowadays I can see the sincerity leaching into it.
I love seeing when you do those posts because I mean maybe it's just like there's that thing that behavior that chimpanzees do that when they're scared they hold on to each other. You might have seen like video of it or pictures of it or something like that. There's like I think it's like a behavior that's like that. Like we are in the midst of being abandoned by a state during one of our biggest times of need, and due to their inaction it's probably going to cause what is going to be an economic depression, which we'll talk about later. But like all we have is each other. Oh shit, I'm just doing the Joe Biden ad. Except he actually has a chance to like change things, but he just won't. No. I mean, the only thing that we have is our mutual aid and our sweet, sweet Patreon listeners.
Yeah, man.
We're all just sitting in a depressed silence now.
It's okay.
Contemplating
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. You got to let it wash over you and allow those feelings to flow through.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to be honest. Rage is the way that I typically will go towards these things, right? Because it's it gets, and in fairness, I'm entirely aware that rage or anger is just a subcategory of fear, right? I'm afraid for my life and my family's lives, for my comrades' lives, for the people I don't know who are vulnerable's lives. And it's extremely fucked up to watch the real-time inaction of the degradation of the stupid fucking liberal institutions that are all we have right now. Yeah. It's fucking maddening for us. We've been analyzing this stuff, like the podcast is almost a year old, guys. It was like July or something.
Yeah.
No?
So shit.
So it's a few months. It's around in its first birthday, and we've been like making an effort to try to analyze this stuff for the better part of a year, and now it's fucking accelerating at a rapid clip. It's really bizarre to watch.
Yeah.
That's why can we transition into some of this material here, because I just, it's a natural progression of this, because the shit that really fucking got me were a few things, and I'll start off just by explaining one of the things that just this came out a few days ago, like a week ago or so, but it was a Vice article saying almost a third of young people have lost their jobs so far. Mm-hmm. As of this isn't part of the article, but if I'm not mistaken, as of last week, 16.6 million people in America have filed for unemployment as a result of losing their job from coronavirus. And in this article here from Anna Almendrala, and also in conjunction with California Healthline, it says, as measures to slow the coronavirus pandemic's led to mass layoffs, people ages 18 to 34 are being disproportionately affected. I won't go through the whole article, but it's just entirely clear that the generational divide in the United States is widening in terms of financial outcomes and financial security, and also electorally. What libs don't fucking understand is we couldn't give a shit about Bernie as a man. Like, seems nice enough, a little grouchy, but, whatever, seems fine. It's the policies.
You got a problem with grouchy?
It's his policies that we coveted, and which is why. And I'm going to read another article title, at least from Vice, which was just a quote from Joe Biden. And Joe Biden trashes millennials in his quest to become even less likable. This was an Eve Pizer thing.
And so the younger generation now tells me how tough things are. Give me a break. No, I have no empathy for it. Give me a break, because here's the deal, guys. We decided we were going to change the world, and we did. We did. We finished the civil rights movement to the first stage. The women's movement came into being. So my message is, get involved.
What the fuck does that mean? First off, he was eulogizing segregationists and actively fighting against busing initiatives. But anyway, so whatever that means, we finished the civil rights movement in the first stage. Everything's fine now, Joe. Thank you. That was it. That's all we needed. 1963 or whatever. The women's movement came to be, whatever that means. So my message is, get involved. Absolutely fucking incoherent. Oh, this is good. And he says, and so there's an old expression my philosophy professor would always use from Plato. The penalty people face for not being involved in politics is being governed by people worse than themselves. If that's not the least self-aware thing I've ever heard anybody fucking say. It's fucking stunning.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, one of the obvious immediate point outs right there, right, where he says, like, he puts the call back onto the supposed fictives that he's, like, fucking arguing against or whatever, where he says, get involved. And then simultaneously, all of the young people who have been part of the kind of this era and this generation's, strive towards activism, he, like, has actively dismissed. Didn't he, like, directly tell, like, the Sunrise Movement people, like, fine, go vote for Trump then? Like, he's, like, deliberately not courting.
He said that several times, yeah.
To, like, fucking people, is multiple times as just an entirely, I mean, the whole tone of that is incredibly dismissive, right? Where it's like, the whole idea of, like, you should get involved. It's like, well, a lot of us were involved, and we were trying to actively stop you from getting the fucking nomination. We were involved, motherfucker.
If I'm not mistaken, Sunrise came out today, Saturday, and decided not to endorse Joe Biden. Shit.
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah,
which
good.
Is great.
Fine. Because I mean, and at a bare minimum, right? Like, even working through the kind of patronage logic of the current Democratic Party, right? And the way that it's set up vis-a-vis this like elite, almost vassalage structure.
Look that one
The
up.
entire premise of that, like especially if you look at it as we were talking about when we were talking about like with Steny Hoyer, right? Like the sort of like machine politics kind of thing. The whole idea is there are going to be disparate groups that make up my constituency. And the ones that I think are valuable to me, the ones that I need, I'm going to reach out to them. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to come to some kind of agreement, some kind of exchange, be like, well, if I can, can I get your endorsement in exchange for offering you XYZ concessions or not? And so like by that logic, right, if he doesn't give any concessions, he doesn't make compromises with those groups, then those groups have no reason to support him. Period. That's it. It's the most basic logic, and the idea that no, you owe him your vote or whatever, it's like, it's so fucking ass backwards. Even if you're taking like a purely liberal approach to understanding representative democracy, the whole idea is that you vote or you give your endorsement or you campaign for somebody who's offering you something in exchange, even if it's fucking pennies, or even if it's some kind of weird backroom deal where it's like, I'm gonna bribe the leaders or the people are at the head of this. I'll make some token generalizing statements, but really I'll give a bunch of them cushy consultant jobs or whatever. They won't even do that. I mean, of course, they wouldn't work with a lot of the strong progressive activist groups because they would have the moral fortitude, or one would hope, to reject that. But they didn't even try that. Like, there's just no strategy. It's literally like, we don't need you to lose this election. That should be his fucking thing. That should be his campaign slogan. We don't need you. We could lose this election all on our own. And then nonetheless blame you when we do.
The centrists like him tout the importance of compromise unless they have to compromise left.
Yeah, of course.
Straight up. They won't give an inch. They won't give an inch to the majority. And a guy like Joe Biden, who has spent his entirety of his political career fostering his home state to become a fucking tax haven. Why? I don't know why we should expect anything. And I gotta fucking Sam Sachs pointed this out, and I agree with him. I gotta hand it to the Democrats that they got their shit together and they squashed our movement. I mean, loosely speaking, we lost a battle. We didn't lose the fucking war, but they got together to squash Bernie. Because they knew exactly what the fuck was happening. They know that there's a generational divide, and they, as agents of capital, are as maniacally driven to squeeze every little fucking ounce out of our labor value before this whole thing fucking falls on its head, which it will. Because here we are at the beginning fucking stages, at the top of the iceberg of an economic depression.
Yeah.
And they don't give a fuck how many people have fucking died already. That's what fucking blew my mind, is that we're like, if something like, as of right now, as we're looking at this on April 11th, 20,000 people have died from coronavirus in America.
Right.
60,000 die every year from lack of health insurance, that if they were able to pay for the care that they needed, that they would have survived. That's 60,000 every fucking year as a baseline. That's it. And that is Joe Biden fucking cynically said, we're going to lower the age of Medicare eligibility as a proposal to 60 from 65.
And that was, I believe, one of what he considered like an olive branch to the Bernie wing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And didn't Hillary say she would consider lowering it to like 55 or even 50?
I think you're right.
So they, even over the course of the last 4 years, they went back on that. Although the one thing I'll say to the Biden thing, right, and especially like given the, on the topic of endorsements and the crisis and everything, right, because there's a lot of chatter. I don't have the interest at this point to look into how valid this is, but there seems to be a lot of chatter in punditry and on the news that like Andrew Cuomo, like, oh look, he's stepping up, this is a sure leadership thing, and there's been some suggestion, oh maybe they'll swap him out at the convention and make Cuomo the presidential nominee, which obviously seems a bit far-fetched, but interestingly Cuomo picked up a very key endorsement this week. All the people in those mass graves endorse Cuomo for the Democratic nominee.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, wasn't there
That's
some
hundreds of, that's almost thousands at this point, and that number's going to keep going up. Those are all votes for Cuomo.
Wasn't there some sort of poll that even that showed like a majority of or like some significant number of Democrats like would actually support Cuomo at this point over Biden?
Yes, and I'll tell you why that's so fucking insane. Because liberals are fair weather fans of freedom and the democratic process. What they're saying is we could not give a shit if we spent hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of people campaigning, going door to door, and including themselves in what is a fucked up but still relatively democratic process, or at least gives fucking service to what should be a democratic process, that they're willing to say, fuck all of that. I don't want actual representation. I just want a minority of party bosses to nominate one of their own and just foist it onto this hatchet-faced fucking goon. Andrew Cuomo, I'm talking about. There's no fucking ideological incoherence that makes that sound like they give a shit about democracy.
They don't give a shit about democracy. They give a shit about getting rid of the bad orange man, so that everything can just be, good again. The way, like back when Obama
Make America
was president.
good again.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh man, dude, don't I almost hesitate to publish it because they're gonna fucking pick it up. They're like, yeah, make America good again.
I think Hillary had said that at one point. Didn't she say like?
No, hers was America is already great.
No, it's America is already great because America is good.
Oh,
I thought that was the line.
America is great because America is good.
Yeah,
I have that fucking burned into my memory.
Yeah. It's good.
Oh God, man. The evergreen quote is from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail, where he essentially said, I'm going to quote it directly. I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in stride towards freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice.
Right.
Who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal that you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action. Who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of good will is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. It's fucking true, dude. I think about that quote all the time, and I think what's crazy is that if there were somebody that would describe themselves as a liberal or a Democrat that listens to this program would say, you guys on the left need to moderate how you talk about us because we're your allies. But MLK knew this, and it is absolutely true that I spend more time angry at white liberals and moderates than I do at conservatives, because conservatives, they want us dead or indentured or something. But at least liberals have the critical mass to make a change and do something. And every day they choose not to. And I fucking
You've
hate
heard
it.
the Phil Oakes song "Love Me, I'm a Liberal," right?
No.
You've never heard?
It's fantastic.
Oh,
You've never
come
heard
on,
that?
man! Yeah, you got to check that
It's
song
great.
out. It's from the '60s. I mean, it is absolutely spot on in describing that, and spot on in describing, the difference between the left and the liberal today. But I'll tell you, what I've been thinking about, man. I saw. God, I think it was Jennifer Rubin or someone the other day had, basically bringing back the line that was like, for every, for everybody on the left that Joe Biden loses, that's just imagine how many, never Trumpers and, how many moderate Republicans he's going to pick up. And this is the same fucking, remember Chuck Schumer had that quote back in 2016. It was like, well, for every working class vote we lose in Wisconsin or whatever, that's two moderate Republicans that we pick up in, the suburbs of Philadelphia or whatever. And, he was right. Hillary Clinton is president now. It's astonishing to me that they think that they are just determined in every sense of it to run 2016 all over again.
Yep. They're more happy to lose than to upset their donors.
Oh, I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, that, if you really want to look at it cynically, yeah. I mean, certainly, they are stupid. They are incompetent. But are they so stupid and incompetent that they think that, rerunning the 2016 playbook is actually going to work? I don't think so. I think that they are happy to lose to Trump.
Yep.
And, maintain control of their own party, their own patronage networks. And, that's the most important thing to them, is to be the minority party or to be the opposition party, but to still, to themselves be in control of it. They'd rather have that and lose to Trump than surrender the party to the left. And, and we've known that. And there was like you were saying, they really, you got to hand it to them almost. Like they really pulled it together right at the 0 hour there, right before Super Tuesday. Because, there was, a good couple week to a month period after the first couple primaries where it's like, man, we're really going to do it. Like there's we got the momentum. Bernie's got the momentum. There's no stopping this. And then, first of all, Elizabeth Warren refusing to drop out was huge. But whatever fucking behind the scenes maneuvering they pulled, right before Super Tuesday, where Buttigieg and Klobuchar dropped out and endorsed Biden. They really pulled it together.
I think it came out yesterday or today that confirmed that Obama stepped in personally.
Oh, of course, yeah. I thought we
to
knew
press
that.
the thumb on the scale. A lot of people had speculated that, but they had sort of denied it. But now it came out for sure. What you said, Chris, is entirely right. It's like, the calculation is the worst thing on earth is if our elite group loses control of the Democratic Party.
Right.
And it would be better for the party to survive and continue under another 4 years of Trump, or, 1,000-year reign of Trump, than fucking, than to concede at all, or to allow, because it's not just like, the people at the top whose names we're all familiar with. There's an army of apparatchiks within the Democratic Party, that are in there for a whole lot of, generationally long structural reasons, consultants and campaign advisors and statisticians, lobbyists. Like, there's a whole kind of network of these people whose entire, job for a lot of them, especially when you're talking about the ones who are, representative of, corporate interests, which are specifically the ones that the left wants to go after, and Bernie named explicitly that they want to go after.
Yes.
All of their jobs are on the line if they didn't do this, and all of that network of patronage that I was talking about, that vassal network or whatever, would have been entirely disrupted by a Bernie entryist takeover of the party. Now, it could still potentially do that because there are certainly still good people, progressive people who are trying to enter the Democratic Party, in primary challenges. We've spoken to a number of them. And, and other people are trying to get involved on more local levels. But, the really big thing would have been this kind of leadership signal, right? Because even though it's not the official kind of leadership position of the party, the presidential candidate, right, is de facto the kind of, you have the presidential pulpit, and that's really, in a certain sense, the most powerful position that a guy like Bernie could have had by taking over, the nomination and then eventually becoming president, right? Perhaps even more so than what he would have as power of an executive. He would have had the power to remake the party and reshape it, and get rid of the fucking hangers-on and the middlemen, the corporate lobbyists fucking contingent of it that for so long, I mean, you know, for 10, 20, 30 years, these are people who have worked their entire lives in this system and they know nothing else. And because they've worked in this system for so long, they're just confident that they know how everything works, which is why, you know, again, you can talk about intentionality or try to quantify fucking evil or whatever, but some of it is like, you know, intentional malice, and some of it is just like stupidity, right? Some of it is like or ideology, right? These people are just convinced this is how the world runs. Don't give me this idealist crap. Yeah, you know, some like hard drinking guy that hangs out, you know, with all the other fucking guys like him in some DC bar called like, you know, the poet of death, and they all go and hang out there after 5 and they drink a fucking gallon of whiskey and they talk about, you know, like
epic bourbon. They're all of them epic bourbon guys.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the people that have all of those connections to, you know, an entire network of that kind of Beltway insider crowd, and then, you know, there's a revolving door between the main media institutions, the fucking like staff that works in those places, and then you know, the private sector vis-a-vis lobbying, and they're all just constantly in this fucking rotation, and all of their connections are built on these social relationships that are developed after drinking the fucking bacon flavored vodka and like, you know, hanging out at these kinds of awful places, and the number of which we've covered and shit. And it's just it's you know, it's not conspiratorial to put it like that. That's how it is. You know, and it doesn't necessarily need to be always that they're like a series of deep malicious actors. It's not like fucking, what was that awful show with what's his name? The ridiculous politics melodrama show that was on Netflix. House of Cards. It's not always that, like, you know, at the top there are all these like evil machinations and stuff. There's just like a lot of like awful ideologically committed people, a lot of them deeply cynical themselves, right? To go talk about how purposeless cynicism can be when you apply it politically, who say the world is not going to get any better. All we have to do is manage it, and we're the people who know how to do it because, god damn it, I love to drink. And it's like, well, I wouldn't trust you to change my fucking car battery. I don't even own a car. I've never owned a car. It's a metaphor that doesn't even apply to me because of how fucked my generation is.
And it needs to be said that to all of those people, it's not going to materially affect them one way or another if Trump is president for 4 more years. I mean, certainly they're distraught, you know, if he does win. But in the same way, if your fucking football team loses, like, to them, like, that's what it ultimately boils down to, is that their team loses. You know, maybe they don't get as good a job, or, you know, they don't get the dream job that they want, you know, if a Democrat was in office. But ultimately, you know, materially, in the things that really matters, they can suck it up and endure 4 more years of Trump as long as they maintain, you know, the positions of power that they're in currently, or the Patriot networks that you're talking about.
I think that's generally true, but there is one real material loss that is in store for some of these guys that I think you're overlooking, which is that somewhere on fucking November 9th, 2020, when Trump wins again, the guy with no neck is going to lose his bet of $100 to some other guy with no hair. And he's gonna have to be like, well, Roger, you got me this time.
It's the Duke brothers from Trading Places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Ooh, I hate him. I hate him so fucking much. Oh, God.
Trump's he's never gonna leave office. He's just never just never gonna lose. No, I mean, I said it the other day, and I was thinking about it, and I was half joking, but I mean, seriously, he's, you know, Trump, because we were talking about, you know, Boris Johnson having coronavirus, which is hilarious, and someone asked me, like, do you think Trump's gonna get it? And I said, Trump already had it. He already had it. It didn't. Yeah. It didn't affect him. If anything, it only made him more powerful. There's no stopping him. He's gonna win.
He's just like, he's a carrier now for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And every time he shakes a deal, makes a deal with somebody, he shakes their hand, and they're like, "Thank you so much, Mr. President." He just gives them coronavirus. He's like, fantastic.
It's like remember the what was it, the Upright Citizens Brigade? It's the ass pennies. It's the ass pennies sketch from like Upright Citizens Brigade or whatever. That is his like power businessman move. It's like every time he shakes someone's hand from now on in some kind of deal, he's going to give them coronavirus, and it's only going to make him more powerful. powerful, and he's gonna win in 2020. He's gonna, and in 2024, he's just gonna run again, and they're gonna be like, they'll be like, sir, there's term limits. You can't, you can't, you really, please, you really can't do this. But he's gonna do it anyway.
Won't you shake a poor sinner's hand? Are you ready? You guys got to get on TikTok, man.
Hell no.
No.
Oh, dude.
Absolutely
You're the
not.
oldest one here. What are you talking about?
The kids are great. They're fucking hilarious, man.
Oh,
Dwight
God.
is literally that meme of like Steve Buscemi being like, "Hey, fellow kids,
Yeah. Hey, kids.
I'm here on TikTok."
Speaking of sincerity, you were way overshooting the mark here, man. Tone it, bring it back a little bit. There's only one way to view TikTok, and it is just pure cynicism.
I love it, man. I love it.
I mean, I'll tell you what, I enjoy it. I have it every once in a while. I go on there and I browse the cop TikToks. There's some good.
Oh, dude,
I like the cop genre, and I like the MAGA genre. There's also some really good QAnon guys on TikToks. I recommend browsing the QAnon hashtags on there.
There's very good socialist content. There's what's funny is when you go into the MAGA side of it, it's like those dumb ones where they're like pointing to words, but it's just like there are two genders. It's the same shtick over and over. They have nothing. But the shit that is like the weirdest and scariest, I think you're totally right, is like the cop TikTok. And it's weird too. Where there's also is military TikTok.
Oh yeah, well, I believe they banned that. I thought, my understanding, because I used to see a lot of military stuff on there, but my understanding was that the military said that they can't do that anymore. Is that, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe they're doing it anyway?
I maybe they're doing it anyway. I mean, I've seen some recently, but it's just like, it's so funny. Because, like, if you look at other militaries that would want to engage the United States, like, their soldiers aren't fucking posting TikToks from the bathroom.
Almost
of the
certainly. I mean, I imagine the IDF probably has some presence on TikTok.
Yeah, but that's like a calculated thing. It's not like, hey, I just want to, have a social media presence and, trade on my uniform, essentially.
You guys are doing this all wrong, man. If you want good video content that is going to be of a highly stimulating nature, what you want to do is you don't need any of these new fancy apps or hardware, okay? You go to youtube.com, you search whatever you want, but the key thing is, if you want to find the really good stuff, the really weird stuff, don't look up weird shit and then click 10 million views, like, oh my god, this is so weird. You want to find something that's got 6 views.
It's true.
And then when you find something that's got 6 views, it'll lead you to something else that has 2 views. And you start cycling through that, and you will start to find just a gold mine of just the fucking, I don't know, just wasteland material. It's unbelievable.
I almost don't even want to admit this, but I spent the better part of an afternoon about a week ago going down this rabbit hole of brony related content on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how I got started with it, but I started going down the rabbit hole there, and there's all these different there's a ton of them. It's all obviously all furry type related stuff too, but there's this whole just little corner of all these very small. They got Twitter accounts too, and they got YouTube accounts, but there's a ton of them. I mean, they've all got YouTube accounts, and it's they're all analyzing, they're doing these long 20-minute videos about just the smallest bit of drama within the very smallest social circles. It's
wonderful. Wonderful.
It was pretty fascinating, man. So Shane, we've got some stuff to talk about if you're familiar with this as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I personally went the road less traveled, to the brony land. But yeah, no, that's a weird space. I mean, I forget if we talked about it on the show, but for a couple of weeks ago, right after me and Carrie recovered from being sick, we got really into all the kids YouTube shit. Did we talk about?
Oh, we talked about
already?
this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, whatever.
Let's talk about the title subject here.
Yeah.
which is something I've been wanting to talk about for like the better part of 4 years from when it came out, but I just didn't really have a forum for it.
I had never seen this before.
Oh, man. I mean, I remember when this came out and just thinking like, I'm not smart enough to understand all of the tools and dynamics at play here that this guy is using, but I knew that it felt deeply fucked up. What we're talking about is a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek, who is essentially which is hilarious, obviously, but it's Sinek.
Mm-hmm.
But he's essentially a motivational speaker, but he has made a name for himself mostly on this particular YouTube video that has over 12 million views called Simon Sinek on Millennials in the Workplace. And I would like to play some of it for you now so you get a flavor, not the whole thing. It's a 15-minute video, and for the relevance of this conversation, I suggest that you watch the entirety of it because it's not that much of a time commitment, but it will have you...
I suggest you don't, man.
Don't? It will make you rip out...
I watched a little... I started watching it right before we started recording, and I got like 7 or 8 minutes in, and I just like started like dicking around on my phone and tuning it out. I was like, this is awful.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah, it's real bad.
So the gist of it, though, is that he is saying that millennials specifically, and of course, you know, now millennials are about to turn 40, and I think at their youngest we're like 24 or something like that, 23. So I mean,
to most people though, they don't even seem to understand that. Like to most people, like, you know, a teenager is a millennial.
Right,
exactly.
It's become synonymous with
young
like
person.
awful young person.
Right.
That's what
right.
it's mainly used when somebody is talking about millennials as a group. It's almost either like, you know, a millennial themselves, like talking about the specific problems that our generation has felt, or somebody older like complaining about the youngs.
There was this guy, when I first moved to New York, I was at this AA meeting, and there was like this like middle-aged guy, like just like extremely New York guy. I don't remember. His name was like fucking like Tony or Frank or Don or something. I don't even remember. But like he was like a 50-year-old guy or something. He was like some kind of contractor, and he was like talking to someone after the meeting, and he was like complaining about like how he can't find anybody good to like, you know, help him out, or he's trying to find any good employees to like work for him. He's like, yeah, these fucking millenniums, you know, they got no work ethic. He just kept saying millenniums like over and over again. It's so funny.
It's really funny.
I just imagine some kind of like timeless celestial body, like, you know, unimind thing, being like, these millenniums.
The millennium.
Yeah, these fucking
no work
millenniums.
ethic.
Well, what's funny about it is the context in which we're even talking about it. I mean, basically, since you just heard part of the clip, basically he's saying, he talks mostly about how millennials are entitled.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a very weird kind of way to talk about a generation, because like, what the fuck does entitlement even really mean? Mm-hmm. And I mean, Webster's dictionary defines entitlement as it's your right to something. Mm-hmm. And what's very weird in like American discourse is like we even talk about it like entitlement programs, and the term has been weaponized to say like to imply that you're not willing to work for something.
Right.
To imply that we've got this in America, we've got this fetish around radical self-determination. And so that only through your hard work and your stick-to-itedness can you pull yourself out of what the scenario implies is an objectively miserable existence. But only through your grit and determination can you make something of yourself. And he outlines in the beginning the 4 fallacies that, well, I'm calling them fallacies, but he's saying that the problems were through parenting, technology, impatience, and environment. Like, which doesn't even intellectually make sense, because like impatience is a totally different thing than either of one of those things. But whatever, he's a fucking idiot, so it doesn't really matter. What was interesting to me is when he said how when millennials go into the real world, right, which even then he's telling on himself, because he's expressing a very small amount of people that are privileged enough to be babied until they're 21 or 22, mm-hmm, right? And stay in, let's just say, not have to work until they're that age. When the reality is that most poor families have children that are working concurrent to them trying to do their studies.
Well, if I can quickly jump in here, because Dwight, you turned me on to this guy, and I'd read a little bit about. I was similar to Chris. I was really dreading actually sitting down and watching it, and the second I watched the entirety of this 15-minute interview, right, and I was like, 30 seconds in, just like sighing so loud that I broke a fucking window. It's just so, because the whole idea, right, his whole like presentation style, as you just pointed out, is like, I'm gonna lay out here, like, and he's obviously a very trained speaker. Let's just say that. I won't use the word skilled, but he's a very trained speaker, and he's one of those people, he speaks very quickly, and it appears, if you're not really paying attention to what he's saying, it appears that he's a smart guy, or at least he's thought about these things, he's created a model, a framework, and as you pointed out, he lays out, here are the 4 problems with millennials as a generation. And what he's really speaking about ultimately too is not as a generation, he's talking about like them in the workforce, like, because he's obviously a motivational speaker that's employed to do consulting work or to go to fucking some corporate retreat and like tell millennials like why you suck as employees.
Speaking of which, we'll probably get to it. I'm sure you guys Googled his name. He's been hired by some very interesting other groups to be a motivational speaker.
Save it for the end.
Okay,
save it for the end.
But again, just to go to the lack of any substance in what he's articulating and arguing, because there are things you could say, right? There's at least a way you could construct that argument that would sound compelling, or you have like some kind of empirical data to back it up, right? But he lays out these 4 kind of areas of like, here are the problems that millennials have encountered as a generation and that they carry with them psychologically as they go into the workforce. But he spends, I want to say, at least 10 out of the 15 minutes just talking about like people are on their cell phones too much.
Right.
That's the entirety of his argument.
That's when I tuned it out, because that's all it was.
It all was just like, you're on your phone too much. You're on your phone too much. And he brings up this one point, and I really had to stop this and like just yell about it. But there was this one little point. So, like, his basic thing with the cell phone is that, like, everybody's too addicted. And because you're too addicted, you're not paying attention in meetings, and you're also not, like, living life to its potential. Like, if you go out with your friends to dinner, that event that everybody can afford to do and does on the regular, you go out with your friends to dinner, right? Like, you're not paying attention to them because you're checking your cell phone, you're checking for a text. And the main through line of his argument is that, phones and like social media writ large, he doesn't even like specify anything. He's just sort of like, the cell phones and the internet, is that it's addictive, right? And then he connects it to like drugs, alcohol, and gambling.
Yeah, he equates it to like, it's like everybody that uses a cell phone is an alcoholic.
Right, exactly. And his argument is like, and I think verbatim what he says is something like, every time you get a little text, you get a little hit of dopamine, right? And that's what causes the addiction. He's like, what else gives you dopamine? Alcohol and drugs and gambling. And I'm gonna step in here as somebody who's like very comfortable with just admitting that I'm a fucking addictive personality or whatever. But like, yeah, okay, there is some truth to that, in the sense that you get a little hit of dopamine, you get a little rush, if you're on social media, you check your likes or whatever, if you get a response out of something. But like, especially in comparing it to drugs, you realize like when you do, let's just say, certain drugs, it's not just like a little hit of dopamine you get, there's a whole other set of sensations that you get, most of which are fucking awesome. And that's why you do them.
No.
Like, that's why like, it's a fucking moronic. The reason why I drink is not because, like, I get a little hit of dopamine and it's sort of like when, somebody likes my tweet. It's because it makes me shit-faced. That's why somebody drinks. And I'm not saying this as, like, this is necessarily a good thing. Obviously, I'm sure some of our listeners, everybody has different relationships with alcohol, and I'm not saying that it's a net good thing. But to compare these two things is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous to say that there's some kind of, because the implication here is that there's a moral equivalency in like texting too much and like being a fucking alcoholic. And there's no reason to moralize either of those things. And even if you were to do it, or to just look in terms of like actual effects, they're not equatable. in any fucking meaningful way if you're trying to construct any kind of argument. And at least insofar as with this interview, that's the entirety of his argument. The entirety of his argument is like, you wouldn't let kids drink, would you? Which is a separate issue. But, like, you wouldn't let kids drink, would you? But you let them on their cell phones. And again, if you're talking about fucking the generation that has grown up with, like, a heavy dosage of social media always in their pocket, that's not even fucking millennials. That's Zoomers.
Right.
I didn't have a fucking smartphone until I was 25. Okay? So, like, you know, what the fuck is the argument here? The people who are on their phones all the time as kids it's an entirely different generation, which again shows that he's not thinking about millennials. It's just blanket ridiculous, like, oh, it's the same shit in the 1950s. If you watch TV too much, your brain will rot. If you read too many comic books, your brain will rot.
When books became popularized, if I'm not mistaken, like, you know, ruling elite were just like, people are just going to be laying about reading books all day.
Yeah, nobody's gonna work in the farms. Everybody's gonna be sitting around reading the Gutenberg Bible.
Exactly. I'll say this too. Why I wanted to set this up in the beginning of talking about like individuality versus collectivism and like personal choice and radical self-determination and stuff. What he clearly purposely omits is that tech companies literally hire psychologists, have entire teams of social scientists that measure and manipulate our brain chemistry in order to get us addicted to that dopamine hit. Like the primary colors and the ways that things interact. And what fucking stuns me, if he's talking about trying to single out young people for this, have you fucking seen boomers and the relationships with their smartphones?
Yeah.
And Gen X? Fucking Candy Crush and Words with Friends and all this shit. They're just staring at that shit all day. They're glued to their fucking phones. It is completely a fallacy that it is only young people. If anything, it's us young people who are like trying to make fucking sourdough and like get to some goddamn roots and like disconnect from our tech hell. Tech hell. Tech, comma, hell.
Tech hell.
Apostrophe. Tech hell.
I like that. Tech hell.
It doesn't really flow well, but I'm trying to get the fucking point across. Yeah, tech hell.
Yeah, no, it's a great point you make, because again, it's a total sidestep of, because you could look at those things and you could say like, okay, this is a social problem, right? And but even like in order to make that statement, you'd have to say, what's the consequence that's bad? And ultimately, the consequence that's bad for him, right? Like, what is the problem here? Again, is like, you're not paying attention in meetings, so you're not making like business connections. That's his argument. But like you said too, then if you're really approaching this as a problem, it has nothing to do with age ranges, right? It's just classic weird conservative mind shit about like, you know, in this technological age, you could get anything from your phone. You don't even have to learn any skills. You want to go on a date? He even says this. He's like, you want to go on a date? All you have to do is go on your phone. You don't have to stumble around in a bar and make an ass out of yourself. And it's like, the idea too implicit in this is like, none of these things can foster real human connections. And while that is and true to a certain extent, that negates, like, I mean, the three of us met on Twitter.
Yep.
I met my fiance on Twitter.
Yep.
And I feel like we have pretty strong relationships, and we've bonded, and we've been able to do different things and do a creative project and talk to each other, create real lasting friendships and shit. It's like somebody who doesn't know how to use a thing looking at it and being like, it's bad, right? And it's not bad, as you were pointing out, in terms of its structural problems. It's bad because, like, you know, you are morally weak. Like, you are an addict, and you can't, and he talks in that kind of way too, this like kind of confrontational style where he's like, it's your problem that you need to fix.
It doesn't even make sense, because how does that apply right now with fucking quarantined? The only way that we're getting our social interaction, the only thing that's stopping us from plunging into spiraling depression, let's wait another month before we can really definitively say that,
no,
but is our
yourself.
fucking video chats and our online connections and shit like that. But yeah, it doesn't fucking make any sense. And tell me if this struck you too, is that most of the context that he's talking about is whether or not millennials can succeed in careers. And he's saying that he's essentially saying that you can only find a fulfillment through your job. And at the end, he even says, like, you know, you say these millennials, you know, how are you happy with your job? And they say, it's fine. And are you happy with your relationship? And you say, oh, it's fine. And he was like implying that just fine is a failure.
Yes. Yeah.
When in reality, like most of the things that we do in our life are euthymic, meaning like they're in a relatively narrow band of like, we're not getting too high, we're not getting too low. Like washing the dishes is not some fucking orgasmic like experience. You just got to wash the dishes. My commute to work, rest in peace, is like not a thrill. I try to make it cope with it by listening to podcasts and shit like that. You know, it doesn't have to be some fucking fantastical journey. The reality is that most people aren't going to live their lives like him, starting out in fucking advertising and shit, and then leading up to what we'll talk about in a moment. I think what it also exposes is the reality that the primary relationship that you have in your life is not between you and your parents, not between you and your siblings, not between you and your significant other, but it's between you and your workplace. That's where we spend the majority of our days. It's where we spend the majority of our emotional labor. That's like a lot of fucking interrelationship problems is because you're so fucking burnt out and you're doing so much emotional labor in your job, especially if you're doing a job like an essential worker is doing, like front facing or working with customers and stuff like that. It's extremely emotionally draining and has enormous impacts on our personal lives. Shout out again to Capitalism Hits Home, part of the Democracy at Work group of podcasts. What an incredible podcast that delineates quite a lot of it. But the primary relationship in our lives, and this is a bad thing, is between ourselves and our workplace. It takes more importance just de facto for survival to prioritize that relationship between you and your workplace rather than you and your significant other, for instance. And his perpetuation of that is fucking damaging. Like, I want a hobby. Like, if I had a job that he would deem as meaningless. Let's say for instance I was a dishwasher in a kitchen for my entire life, and then I was able to subsist on that income. But I was a fucking world champion model airplane racer because that's where I loved, and I devoted that to my time, and that's why I spent all my non-working hours working on. Like, would he consider that a failure because it couldn't be monetized or because it couldn't be, you're not making an income off of it? I don't like this man.
No, he sucks. He sucks, dude. And again, he's the product of like there's this whole kind of like subset in like sort of marketing and PR and communication called strategic communication, which is almost entirely used in the sphere of like the business world, but occasionally also extends into this kind of like self-help nonsense and whatever. And there's a baseline utility of it. I mean, a lot of like universities and stuff will offer courses in strategic communication. Sometimes in a few that I've encountered, they'll mix a course like that, effective communication, strategic communication, or whatever, even a requirement, like a gen ed requirement. And the baseline utility of it that I do think is somewhat valuable and a good thing for most people to learn is just you learn how to speak effectively, right? Which is to say, not something that you need to engage in all the time, but it's a helpful tool for for your work environment, for any kind of thing that requires planning or, direct coherence. If you have to give a presentation and any conceptualization of what a presentation could be or where it could be, right? There are like, tools and patterns of speech that you can learn in order how to communicate effectively, communicate directly, right? And, a wide number of people, like I said, usually are exposed to this. They have to learn it vis-a-vis getting a higher education, or occasionally, again, you'll get like a fucking asshole like him to come to a business retreat or whatever to teach like, people and management workshops or whatever to learn how to speak effectively. And the problem is with a guy like this, and there are a lot of these kinds of guys, these motivational speaker people, is they take that baseline skill and they find, hey, I'm actually pretty good at this, right? Like, I can effectively speak. Now, there's a number of things you can do if you have that skill set, right? Some of them that come to mind are like politician, right? If you can effectively speak, you could probably be a pretty decent rhetorician and leader, right? You can get up there, you can articulate the demands or the needs of your community in a very strong, clear-cut way. Similarly, organizer, right? Like you could organize effectively, right? You can be part of some kind of political organization, whatever. The point is, there are all these different applications. Teaching is another one. If you learn how to speak effectively, you can be a really good teacher. Whether or not, whatever age range you're talking about, right? You can learn specific skills to teach different groups of, children or young adults, right? You can learn effectively how to utilize that. These kinds of guys take that skill and they realize, oh, I'm really good at that. There's a whole other realm of shit you can do that's not socially useful, which is business bullshit, essentially. Like, hey, I could be like a PR manager, or I can bullshit my way through, the various echelons of a corporation, or just straight up con men. I can be a con man. I could be a shim sham man. I could be a flim flam man. I could sell fucking snake oil, right? Because I know how to speak effectively. I know how to prey upon people's anxieties. I know how to run a crowd. I know how to control a crowd, right? And so the routes of what you can do with that are obviously limitless in this day and age. You could become the fucking president by doing that shit. Or, you do what he does and you say, like, hey, I'm going to go around, I'm going to do these conferences, I'm going to write a couple of books. He has a bunch of books that are called, like, Knowing Why, What is How is What. His most recent his most recent book is called The Infinity Game, and I read like a little summary of what it is, and it's just like the most mindless business babble bullshit that obviously then you can hawk for, tens of thousands of dollars, a speech engagement to go speak at a fucking lunchtime forced propaganda session at like Google or the fucking DNC or whatever. And you go and you say, what's really effective and important in life is thinking up, not thinking down. It's fucking useless. But if you're captivated by that in that moment, and if you already have ideological predilections, and again, it's a way to prey upon somebody's anxiety. That's what a really good con man and speaker can do. They can needle in and figure out. And so in the case of millennials, right, a lot of us feel guilty and shitty all the time because of the situation we're in. And of course, because it's as you point out, Dwight, a hyper-personalized culture that we've grown up in. Like, we think about that. We evaluate ourselves. We compare ourselves to other people. We think, man, I'm not in my life where I wanted to be, but so-and-so is. Maybe if I had done this, maybe I should change my career. Maybe I should change this or that or whatever. And then here this guy comes along and just finds all of those fears, needles into them, and says, look, ultimately, there's a two-phase solution to this. Step one, put your goddamn phone down, and you already feel guilty about using it, so you say, yeah, you're right, I should put my phone down. What's step two, Mr. Magic Man? He says, buy my fucking book. It's called Up is Down and Down is Out. Zippity-doo. Like, what the fuck? Well, went off there. I'm sorry.
I love it.
I'm sorry.
It's exactly what I was hoping for, if I'm really honest. I was like, I just want to hear Shane talk about this guy. And I got exactly what I wanted. But I mean, what makes sense, exactly as you said, is him talking about this is an advertisement. This 15-minute segment is an advertisement for him to sell his motivational speaking, because his audience will be C-suite level executives that they have a problem that their board needs him to figure out how to do it. How can we extract as much labor value from millennials as possible? Because they want fucking beanbags and they want fucking beer on tap after 4:30, whatever, and they want to be able to be happy. The fucking poor suckers.
Dwight, I'm dying for you to maybe you would like to share, who some of the people are who have, having seen this advertisement for his services, booked him.
Interesting that you should ask this.
Please.
Interesting that you should ask this, Chris. I'm so glad you brought this up. So yes, who are some of his clients? Well, I stumbled upon something that was written. It's an investigation from the Young Turks, written from mascot of the show, Mr. Ken Klippenstein. This came out in June of 2018, called ICE Paid Famous Motivational Speaker for Leadership Training.
So good, man.
At the same time that the Trump administration authorized its controversial border separation policy, morale at Immigration and Customs Enforcement may have received a boost from an unlikely source, a famous motivational speaker with a history of criticizing President Trump. ICE awarded a $98,000 no-bid contract for, quote, customized Simon Sinek's leadership training to take place between April 26 and May 15th of 2018, according to federal procurement records reviewed by the Young Turks, a.k.a. the GOAT, Ken Klippenstein. It was on May 7 that the government officially began implementing its policy of separating undocumented immigrant families. So literally in the middle of his training was when the government, ICE specifically, started literally doing fascism at the border. Oh, fuck me. Just days after Trump's inauguration, Sinek appeared at a private retreat for GOP leaders.
Hell yeah,
interviewing Vice President Mike Pence at a dinner there. In April of 2017, President Trump's daughter, Ivanka Trump, wrote on Facebook, "One of my favorite speakers, Simon Sinek, teaches us the power of asking simple questions to inspire action. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it starts with why that have the ability. Oh, and it's those who start with why that have that ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them." Ivanka Trump's post also linked to one of Sinek's TED Talks. And it actually goes here. In 2016, he gave a lecture that became a viral sensation on YouTube, in which he diagnoses the problem with millennials, entitlement, social media, photos, social media, cell phones, and so on.
This guy just needs to, this guy really needs to just step up and fill the fucking void left by Jordan Peterson right now and just start just grafting just straight up fucking like fascist ideology on top of whatever fucking weird, motivational bullshit he's doing. Just include a little bit of fascism along with your life coach bullshit.
Exactly. For $100,000, he trained the fascist actors how to be leaders. Are you fucking kidding me? Literally train them.
Talk about the fucking banality of evil, man. This guy, I'm sure, sees nothing wrong with what he did.
He's fucking $100,000 up. Are you kidding me? It's good coin for fucking 2 weeks.
This is, again, the thing with the personality type like this, of somebody who just learns the skill of, like, effective speech and talking and can kind of mix in enough, general statements, but a few, like, quasi-pseudo-intellectual words or thought patterns, right? Is that you can end up intellectualizing fucking anything. And to just draw out that one quote from Ivanka that you just said, right? The idea is, like, we follow leaders for ourselves, which is like the most blatantly authoritarian fucking nonsense you've ever heard. Like, what does that even mean? It's an empty statement unless you just kind of strip it of all of its fucking, pleasantry, and you just say, like, it is good to subjugate oneself to authority. That's what that statement means. It's just said it in a more roundabout fucking way with diagrams that say who, huh, he, huh. It's fucking. I'm sorry, I can't get over from one of his books, one of his big like bestseller books. He has this thing he calls the Golden Circle, and it's literally just like it's like a target. That's where the fucking idea belongs, my friend. But it's 3 circles, and the inside circle, like concentric circles, and the inside circle says why, and the next one says how, and then the most outer one says what.
Oh my God.
What is this supposed to mean?
That's it. You don't get it? That's how social life should be organized. First you ask why, then you ask how, then you ask what. It's just this, like, meaningless, like, couldn't it be first you ask what, then you say why, then you say how? It means nothing. It's the idea that you can generalize, there's some generalizable principles that you can apply to every problem in your life. And so long as you accept the premises that you're responsible for everything that you do and everything that happens to you, so buck up. And then second of all, also defer to authority when it's important. And then third of all, please fucking make sure the check clears, because You know, by the way, too, I looked into it. As of this year, this guy's worth $18 million that he's gotten entirely from doing this shit. So any amount of sympathy or feeling like, oh, maybe, you know, he's just like a guy trying to make a thing. He's a fucking multimillionaire off this nonsense, gibberish.
Yeah.
I could probably get one of his books and do a line-by-line fucking takedown of why it's stupid, but the more interesting project would be to just write something equally dumb and put it as a challenge. Just fill it with meaningless statements and say, my critique of Simon Sinek's Golden Circle is that it doesn't actually take into account the tesseract that exists around the circle, which in itself is in a time pyramid.
It's what's so funny to me is that the target audience, again, is like, you know, C-suite executives that are supposed to be in charge of these large labor forces and shit. Any C-suite executive is supposed to be like empirically knowledgeable and would look at data and look at trends and all this and actually like put some empiricism to whatever change they're trying to make. This guy offers zero of that, offers none of that, and yet is you know, a fucking C-suite executive will walk away from this corporate retreat and go back to his team and be like, guys, I found out what our problem is. This is an incredible motivational speaker. And what he told me, what I realized our problem is that we're not afraid of success. We're not afraid of failure. We're afraid of success.
Right.
And then walk away from that. Oh, fucking profound, dude. Fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Good for this guy, actually. Good for Simon. Like, no, seriously. I almost like, I can almost appreciate the grift. I can almost appreciate like how fucking funny it must be when he like, He does his last bow on stage and says like, you know, and I'll leave you with that, Thos. And he goes around, gives a solemn nod, goes into his green room, is handed the check, and he closes the door, and he's just like, I can't fucking believe that they fell for this. Like,
this is
stunning.
completely unrelated to everything we're talking about. But what
Please
I'm
go
reminded
ahead.
of, there's a guy, like, speaking of, you know, a grift I can really almost respect, and, you know, being able to pat yourself on the back about it, but also, you know, speaking to this type of this very particular type of effective communicator and personality. I've definitely mentioned this guy on Twitter before, but there's a character I'm absolutely fascinated with. There's a singer named Paul Anka, right?
I know Paul Anka. You are my destiny.
He has an estranged cousin named Daryl Anka, who
yes, I do remember this.
Since the late 70s has he's like this like new age like spiritual guru or whatever, and he's been pretending to be able to channel what he calls an interdimensional being named Bashar. Mm-hmm. So like he does this whole thing where he like, you know, this whole little song and dance on stage where he like pretends to meditate. He goes in this meditative state, and then he does this like absurd like sort of like choking type thing, and like he like convulses around where the being is supposed to be entering his body, you know what I'm saying? And then he like does these presentations and, you know, answers questions for credulous people, and I mean charges like $200-$400 a ticket for these little seminars that people come to. And like on top of that, he also he does like private sessions. He lives in Los Angeles. He does like private sessions. He's constantly booked for those as well. I'm not even sure what the price tag on those is. It's probably significantly more, but this guy's been making a killing doing this for like 40 years. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, how big a piece of shit you have to be to do that, but also like, man, I've almost got to respect it to be able to do that, and like you get that check clears, you get that money, and you're like, I can't believe I got away with it again. I can't believe they fell for that.
Here, I could do it right now. I could do it. It takes nothing. It takes nothing. If you have a modicum of that effective speech thing, I'll do it right now. Okay, listener.
Channel the being. How are you going to do it? What's your method here? We got to figure out what your motivational speaking grift is going to be.
My method, right, is that the primary problem with today's generation, and if you're listening to this, I really want you to think about this. Look back into your life. Think about what you did today. Okay? What you did not do, right, is get physically in touch with yourself, right? You're probably sitting down. You might be listening to this sitting down. Maybe you're commuting or whatever. You might be in your car, right? But you're not really getting in touch with the physicality of your body. And your body is a temple to success, okay? So what I want you to do, if you're listening to this right now, okay? stand up. Take a little stand up. If you're already standing, notice how you're standing. What's your posture like? All right? Breathe in and out really deeply. Now, close your eyes, tilt your head down, open your eyes. What do you see? You're going to see your feet, okay? If you're not wearing shoes, you're going to see your toes. When was the last time you looked at your toes? Okay? In your toes is the secret to success. Okay? This is the fucking nonsense. You could just do that and then, writ large 1,000 times over and over again. It's fucking, it's meaningless jibber jabber that for some reason, again, if it appeals and it targets a group that is, has a lot of anxiety and that anxiety is again driven by the social conditions we're in, right? Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to be happy. It's the same when we were talking about the it rap shit. You want to be young, you want to be beautiful. You want to lose weight. You want to make money while you're losing weight, while you're being beautiful, while your success mind toes. Like you want all of it at once. And it's really sad to me to see that. I mean, on the one hand, I can respect it in the sense of you guys are saying, like, in terms of just grifting rich people, right? But there's a whole kind of other group of people that get wrapped up into this shit. People who think like, and it is really like a rich man's fucking fascination and world. It kind of reminds me like the shit with the phones, especially because his whole thing is like, I leave my phone at the house every night when I go out to the 4-star fucking $300 dinner that I can do, right, which everybody does. I leave my phone at the house so I can pay attention to the meal that I'm eating or whatever. And what that made me think of is I knew this guy once. I don't know if you guys have ever met a guy like this, but I knew this rich guy once who like didn't like to handle money, like physical currency. And so we'd be like going out, we'd be doing certain things and like sometimes, we'd be exchanging cash for different, or I would be buying something or whatever. I'd be like, oh, here, do you want like, do you want the money back or something? And he'd be like, no, like, I don't like to touch money.
What?
And it was just like this like absurd, like, you're like, first of all, motherfucker, I love to touch money. Are you kidding me? The second I get a little bit of that, ooh, I'm rubbing it all over, baby. Like I'm taking a bath in singles, all right? I'm rubbing quarters through my fucking hair, all right? Like, but that whole like affect, right? Which is contrived in some new agey bullshit to be like, I don't like to handle money because, it's a little coarse or crass, and somehow that doesn't sit with me very well. Or, I don't like to use my phone. I like to leave my phone in the other room. One of the reasons I have my phone on me at all times, right, is because for a number of years, my job was entirely dependent on the idea that I would have 24/7 communication. There were a few jobs when I was doing, like, film and stuff where, like, the whole premise was you needed a smartphone, and there were times where it's like you need to be 24/7 available. Like at 3 a.m, if we call you for XYZ emergency, you have to do this. And a lot of people are in similar situations, who work under regimes where you have to be in constant communication. You have to be responsive to emails, you have to call, and if you don't, it's a problem. It looks bad. So the idea that it's all this like personal fucking, like, oh, you're playing Angry Birds too much. Have you ever thought about smelling the flowers? Fuck you!
Again, bolstering the idea that the primary relationship in your life is between you and your employer.
Right. Exactly.
And like also, I mean, I can play the game of like using anecdotal evidence, to try to prove some point about generational entitlement as well. I got a story, Shane. I don't know if we ever told you the story, but one of the times me and Dwight met in the city, we were eating at this Chinese restaurant. Right? Okay. And
hell yeah.
it was like a Friday or Saturday night. The restaurant was packed. It was very busy. And we were seated at this large round table.
Oh, fuck.
And it was us. Yeah. It was us and the people we were with, right? But we were sharing this very large table with another party that was sitting directly across from us, right? And it was like this boomer, like this old man, and like 3 other people that seemed to be maybe somewhere his kids or something. He was probably close to 70. Everybody else was probably in their 40s. But like this table had one of those like lazy Susan, like things in the middle of the table, like one of those rotating trays you can like share dishes or whatever, right? And so one would think that if there's 2 separate parties, both have their fucking plates of food on that thing, that, like, you don't get to use that thing. Because, like, if you're fucking rotating it on your side to, like, pass the dish down to the person next to you or 2 people away from you, like, you're fucking up the placement of the people's food on the other side.
My food disappeared.
Right. One would just think that you'd lose that privilege because you're sharing this fucking table with other people. But this guy did not seem to understand that, and in fact seemed to almost like spitefully go out of his way to do it purposely to like fuck with us.
I would say he relished in that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm pure entitlement. I think the even funnier anecdote is that he was remember they had that whole fucking plate of like mussels or clams or whatever, and like as he's eating them, right, he's like, never mind that they've got numerous other like empty plates that they've like, you know, had food on and stuff. So like as he's eating these mussels, he's like taking the shells and he's like making a little pile of the fucking discarded shells directly on the table. Like rather than like putting it on a plate.
That's right.
Right, that was the best part. And then I believe someone may have said something to him or something, because it was one point where he's like, "Oh, that's how they do it in China. It's fine."
What a fucking rube.
Oh my god.
What a fucking rube.
Didn't you took a picture when we left? You took a picture.
Did I really? Oh, Jesus
That should
Christ.
be that should be the episode. Art. I think you took a picture of his little fucking pile of mussel shells just sitting on the table. Fucking asshole.
Do you remember when that was? Because I could search by date.
Oh, it would have been
like
November or December, right?
I can look it up by the name of the hang on.
Yeah, I could certainly figure it out.
Look at this typical millennial on his phone.
Yeah, here we go.
But see, I mean, there you go.
Oh shit, dude, I got it right here.
But if we didn't have our phones with us, he wouldn't have been able to capture that this guy's monumental fucking arrogance.
Oh man. Dude. Oh, that's definitely gonna be the fucking artwork. Oh, that's so good.
Just, so if we're going on fucking bullshit anecdotal evidence of, generational entitlement, I mean, what's more fucking entitled than that guy's attitude right there?
Here, I've got another similar anecdote, right, to kind of this idea of how the older generations, right, have actually proven to be quite entitled in their approach to life. They burned up half of the world's oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
there you go.
We can't fucking overstate just how, if there's any one generation that was entitled,
yes,
it was the boomers. Even fucking, there's a whole bit that George Carlin goes off, and he's like a member of the silent generation. He preceded boomers by like 8 years or something like that, where he talks about boomers being the most fucking entitled generation ever to walk the earth. Mm-hmm. And for the record too, anybody that's ever been to a corporate meeting watches the fucking Gen Xers and boomers be on their fucking phones.
Yes.
So fuck him. Fuck that.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. Oh, that's good. Oh, this, I really, guys, thank you. I've been holding on to this. I've been holding on to this for like
Anytime.
15 minutes.
That's what we're here for, pal.
I've been holding on to it for like 4 years since I first saw this thing, and I feel better now that we've dissected it. And he's on Twitter, and he has 600,000 followers. And it would
God,
be...
of course he does.
Not for long.
So
I would wager, like, even for a guy who certainly is quite popular, I would wager that a good chunk of those followers, even without even looking at his account, I would wager that a good chunk of those are purchased. We'd have to take a look at what kind of engagement he gets on his post, because I don't buy that.
Let's fucking take a look. Let's take a look.
I did a cursory search of looking for some keywords to see if he had much to say about contemporary politics. And I found one YouTube interview with him where he's like talking about Trump, and it's just some nonsense, very basic, like, Trump is a TV personality and TV is, simulated reality, blah, like, just, again, circular brain nonsense that it takes very little cognitive ability to kind of like construct that thought. But like in terms of his Twitter account, it seems like he mostly stays clear of like partisan politics, but he has a couple of old tweets from like 2010, 2011, 2012, and they're all these like weird, again, circular speech pattern things where he's like, the thing about Republicans is they say a loss is a victory, but the thing about Democrats is they say a victory is a loss. And it's just like, it's like fucking, there's more insight to be gotten from like Yoda than this bullshit. You know what I mean? It's these like ridiculous turns of phrases that you can twist anything into anything, and it can kind of sound a little clever because you turn something on its head. It's not interesting, and it's not at all a mark of real intelligence or insight.
Dude. What do you got, Dwight? You're really laughing at something here.
3 days ago, he posted this. It's a quote. It says, "Be nice and don't be scared." Dave Chappelle.
What's his name? I'm gonna look up his Twitter account.
Simon Sinek, Sinek. Like, here's a post he did 2 days ago. It got 87 likes. You know, and 600,000 followers.
Sinek. He's those fucking followers are bought, man.
Love equals service. To serve another is an act of love, and to love someone is the choice to serve. What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, I just replied to that one.
Yeah. Shut the fuck up.
You know what this reminds me of? When in like I want to say around like 2014 or so, I was in this store. It was like some awful like knick-knack stationery store in New York, and they had like decorative plates with like sayings on them. You know what I'm talking about? Sure. But like they were like quotes, like inspirational quotes. And the one I bought it because it was just too amazing to not purchase this item. But it was like a little white square plate with like very primary colors, nice font on it, and it was something like there's nothing more important in life than love, Leon Trotsky. And I had that hanging up next to like all of my like fucking Soviet propaganda shit I'd have in my house.
So good.
I was searching around Simon's account right now to see if he literally tweeted "live, laugh, love," but he hasn't, unfortunately.
Oh man.
Yeah.
PragerU follows him.
Oh, of course.
Oh, how much you want to bet he's going to be on PragerU?
I saw, friend of the show, Jared, follows him, as does Jane Sanders and PragerU. Those are the three. Those are the three.
The two genders.
Jane is canceled. Jane is canceled.
Yeah, Jared, sorry we got to do it to you, man.
Jared's doing. I'm sure Jared's doing it. Recon wise.
But yeah, no, I mean this guy. Yeah, he's gonna be a fucking Prager. I mean, he's gonna go the fucking Steven Crowder route, where he's like, eventually this is gonna burn out, or this isn't gonna be enough for him, and he's gonna go the fucking Jordan Peterson route. He's gonna start fucking, grafting some fucking right wing ideology on top of his motivational self-helpy bullshit, and he's gonna be a PragerU presenter in 5 years.
I looked up on YouTube because I was just curious. Simon Sinek PragerU, and I didn't get a hit back for that. But just based on that search, the top thing is like a hour-long lecture he did, 7 million views. The name of it is just Simon Sinek: Why Leaders Eat Last.
Why leaders what?
Eat last.
Shut the fuck up.
Jesus Christ. Absolute pablum.
Yeah.
Absolute pablum. Cow for cows. Cow brain shit.
I'm gonna do my response, and it says, "Why we eat you." The show title coming back around.
Yes. Eat your leaders, Simon.
Shang-Chi, eat your leaders. Fuck them. 6 views on YouTube. Posted 9 years ago.
Oh my god. Oh boy. All right, I'm calling it here. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, we've been at this a while, man.
Yeah. We did. This is. I feel good. We needed this. A little bit of
catharsis. I
catharsis.
definitely needed this.
Quarantine catharsis while I'm literally running down, chasing after UPS trucks, hoping my Xbox gets here soon.
Oh, you haven't gotten it yet? Did you finally order any fucking games?
I didn't order any games, which if I'm not mistaken,
man?
Well, it's pretty important. It's an important part, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, why are you so excited about the console if you don't even have games? What are you going to do with it?
I just thought it looked so pretty.
It does look pretty.
It's a digital version, so I just download games.
Yeah, I mean, that's mostly what I do, is just download them.
Yeah, but it's going to take a lot of time to download some of them, and there's only X amount of space on the Xbox.
Fuck me.
No, you can download stuff.
Me.
You'll be good.
I'm only going to play 2 games. I'm going to play whatever game that I have to play that like I'll do Twitch streaming with, which I'm just gonna get my brain splattered on the battlefield, whatever it is. And then
Get the new Call of Duty, man.
sounds great. And then I'm gonna play
I'll
the
fuck
game.
you up, dude.
I'll play the game that I actually want to play, which is like a completely tedious, extremely annoying like racing game or something. It was probably gonna be.
That's right. You said you're in the racing games.
I love racing.
You'd probably like. It's a big genre, and I have no interest in it, but it's like huge. Euro Truck Simulator.
Oh, dude, yeah.
There's like a ton of these games where it's a simulator of like driving freight trucks down like highways. That's it.
That actually that sounds interesting. I would like to try that.
Oh, stay cool, folks. You're crazy.
Oh, it's so good. All right, stay cool, everyone.
Let's get it.
Stay cool, stay cool, stay
White
cool.
and blue. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. I vote for the Democratic Party. They want the UN to be strong. I attend all the Pete Seeger concerts. He sure gets me singing those songs. And I'll send all the money you ask for, but don't ask me to come on along. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal. Sure, once I was young and impulsive. I wore every conceivable pin. Even went to socialist meetings. Learned all the old Union hymns. But I've grown older and wiser, and that's why I'm turning you in. So love me, love me, love me. I'm a liberal.